So we're just beginning the Exploring Monastic Life course. I know not all of you are going to be here for the entire time, but so I'm directing the teachings primarily for the people who are doing the course who will be here the entire time. So it's a unique course we have at the Abbey because we're a monastery, not a Dharma center, and there's a big difference between the two. So we want to really give people the opportunity to have experience of monastic life, at least as how we do it. There's many different ways to live monastic life, and if you've been to Asia or other centers in the West, you'll see that. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay. So, as a monastic, there's different lifestyles you can live. They usually have some combination of study, meditation, and service. And according to how the different monasteries or your different teachers, you'll find different emphasis on different of these components. So here we try and have a balance of all three. At the Abbey, we're not trying to create a Tibetan monastery. Tibetan monasteries are basically, they're schools. We have this idea of like a Western monastery where people are praying and practicing all day, or they're, teachers or running hospitals or whatever. But many of the Tibetan monasteries are primarily educational institutions, okay? And so people get their education, and then some of them stay in the monasteries and continue to teach, and some of them go other places to teach or to do other things. So our monastery isn't just an educational institution, where you're studying all the time and then you get to your degree and then you go do, whatever you want. We're trying to make a community of people who really have Sravasti Abbey as their home. Okay? So, we have education because you have to learn the Dharma before you can practice it. We have a component of meditation and practice, and then we have a component of offering service to the community, or to the broader community, because I feel very strongly it's important to develop all aspects of ourselves and not just kind of one part. Okay, and I've had a lot of experience living in communities with Westerners, both Dharma centers and monasteries, so I kind of have my ideas about what works and what doesn't work. So that's also incorporated into our program here. As part of the basic structure of living at the Abbey, everybody keeps the 5 precepts, plus a few other kind of things, and especially if we're exploring monastic life, which monastic life involves keeping precepts, then it's especially important to live within these guidelines while we're here at the Abbey. So I just want to run through them quite briefly to remind everybody. So no killing, so that includes also animals, insects, and really trying to protect life as much as we can. And if we do so, we create a zone of peace around us, so everybody can feel safe. Yeah, not like other parts of the world where you just step into the town and, you can feel the energy and it's not safe. A second is to not take things that haven't been given to us. So not stealing, and for those of you who are guests, the things like in the bathrooms, the soap, and the things that are out already, they're for common use. But anything that is in a cupboard or a drawer, if you need something else, please ask a community member to help you. Okay, it's there. Those things are not just for people to go and get what they need. Okay? And cleaning utensils and all that kind of stuff is obviously for community use. And then the third one is, the usual fifth precept is not having unwise or unkind sexual behavior. In the context of the Abbey, then there's no sexual behavior at all. Because this is one of the foundation things for monastic life. Yeah, one of the big things that you give up that sets a monastic lifestyle apart from a lay lifestyle. Okay? And so not having any sexual contact or sexual relationships also means that you don't need to wear perfumes, ornaments, and jewelry and aftershave, and you don't need to decorate yourself and all those kinds of things. Okay? So no ornaments, including watches, those go in pockets. And, we don't need to try and make ourselves look good. We don't need to be self-conscious about how we're walking to see if somebody we're attracted to is looking at us. All these kind of trips that go on when people are sexually active and attracted to each other just get cut out of the way here. It's like, if you want to do that, there's the whole rest of the world. But we're doing something different here. Okay? And like I said, that really clarifies our relationships amongst the people that otherwise we might be sexually attracted to. And it also helps us just to be more satisfied with our body in general, because we don't have to make our body look exceptionally wonderful or this or that to attract anybody, because that's not the purpose of our lives. Okay, so the rest of the world may think we're a little bit crazy, but that's okay. From a Dharma viewpoint, they're crazy. So we all get along very well. Okay, then the fourth one is not to lie. Okay, so to be truthful in what we say. And, we don't need to cover things up here. We can be transparent, and other people will support us. We don't need to be ashamed of different things or hesitant to reveal things. And I think especially, let's not lie to ourselves by telling ourselves we're incapable, or something's wrong with us, or everybody else can do it but I can't, or all these kinds of self-images that we develop and believe in that are actually not true. So let's try and shed those as well. And then the fifth one is not taking intoxicants. So that includes not only alcoholic beverages, but also recreational drugs and any kind of misuse of prescription drugs. So if you have prescription drugs, take them. That's fine. Take them according to how they're prescribed, but not more and not less. Because I don't know if you realize this, but more people in the U.S. die from overdoses of prescription drugs than from illegal drugs. Isn't that astounding? So, so it's a big problem in the country, so no abuse of prescription drugs here, please. And then also no singing, dancing, or playing music. So now, you're going to really think we're crazy, because this one of the favorite things that people do on the outside is sing, dance, and play music. And you're going to say, but why? Well, aren't we chanting? Isn't that singing? Well, that is a kind of singing, but it has we're supposed to be concentrating on the meaning of what we're saying. It's not just for the melody and so forth. But the reason we don't sing, dance, and play music is because after you play music, at least my experience is, then when you sit down to meditate, the music's still playing in your head. Okay? And dancing, you draw a lot of attention to yourself. And same with singing and playing music. It's like, I'm the one that's showing off my musical or dancing ability or whatever it is. And so it draws attention to ourselves. It creates a self-image that isn't necessarily helpful when you're trying to penetrate the lack of a truly existent self. Yeah, you don't want to bolster your self-images. Also, this includes entertainment in general, and so for that reason, there's no TV at the Abbey. So many people kind of have withdrawal symptoms when they come here, and the use of internet is curtailed and modified, and there's restrictions on that because we're trying to stop expending a lot of our precious time on things that don't have a long-lasting spiritual meaning. Okay? So we need to know a little bit about what's going on in the world, and to that extent that's fine, but we don't need to be well-versed in all the intricacies of what is going on in Syria and what Edward Snowden is doing and all these kinds of things. Yeah, we're trying to focus on the Dharma and purify our own minds. And our time, when you're a Dharma practitioner, your time is your most precious possession. Yeah. And this is really something to think of. Our time is our most precious possession. So, losing our money, losing our material stuff, that stuff come, go, it's not going to have any long-lasting hardship with it. But wasting our time is very, very harmful to ourselves and others, because it's, the only time we have to practice Dharma is in this moment, because the only time we live is in this moment. And so if we waste our time with entertainment and all these kinds of things that people usually do in society, then at the end of our lives we don't really have much to show for it. We might have a scrapbook full of napkins from discos where we've gone, but, and a lot of good memories, but so what? What else? There's nothing really of value in the long term by entertainment and so on. So we're really trying to keep our mind focused on our spiritual practice. Okay? And then not sitting on high beds and seats. Yeah, so, in ancient India, everybody sat on the floor, and then you only sat up on the floor. If you sat up from the floor, it was regarded as a very high position or something like this. In our culture, that's not usually the case. If people sit on chairs, everybody's completely okay. Nobody thinks, oh, that person is somebody special because they're sitting on a chair. That's chairs in general, okay? But, let's not sit in places or in ways that attract attention to ourselves or that make us superior to other people, okay? So when we enter a room, we don't choose the nicest chair to sit ourselves down in, or the one in the most prominent place so that everybody, will look up to us. We become aware of creating an attitude of humility, okay? Not, again, wanting to, here I am, world, aren't you fortunate to have me in you? To kind of subdue that mind. So, we'll be doing some discussion groups as well as having Dharma talks, and in the discussion groups we really ask ourselves some serious questions about our practice and how we think about things and how we want to grow and change. So we really develop a lot of openness and trust in the course of doing these discussion groups. Yeah, and sometimes they're challenging. What we're asked to think about or speak about can be challenging to us, but that's okay. Something being challenging doesn't mean it's bad. We have this thing that if it's difficult, it's bad. In Buddhism, Difficulty doesn't mean it's bad. Yeah. Yeah. It's our mind that makes something easy or difficult. And anyway, if you're going to become a Buddha, you have to get used to, transforming your difficulties into opportunities. So instead of shying away from difficulties, we try and work with them and use them to grow and go beyond our usual self-imposed limitations. So I thought today, so that was a little bit of an introduction, I thought today to talk a little bit about why the Buddha set up the precepts. But first, I have to say, why is there ordination to start with? Yeah. So when the Buddha was alive, okay, it was quite common, and still is quite common in India, for there to be wandering mendicants, people who have left home life. This is a shramana, somebody who has gone forth, who has left home, who has left the home life for the homeless life, somebody who is not a householder. So there's, historically the tradition of these people who in ancient India were basically wanderers, including the Buddha and his Sangha, and they were trying to discover the meaning of life and how to get out of the cycle of continual rebirth under the influence of afflictions and karma. And their lives were dedicated to this, and it was completely socially acceptable to do this. Not totally socially acceptable. Parents still put up a fuss back then, just as they do now. Okay? But, if you saw a wandering mendicant in the street, you kind of knew what they were. That's what I mean by socially acceptable. You didn't look at them like they were from outer space. So, the Buddha also, in his search for awakening, became a wandering mendicant. And after he attained awakening, and people began to come to him because they saw he had some special qualities, and they wanted to develop those same qualities and attain the same kind of realization he had, they came to him for guidance. And so those people who were really serious about being liberated from cyclic existence became his group of disciples. Okay, so the term hearer or Shravaka actually means disciple. Now in the Mahayana tradition it's come to mean a whole vehicle of practice, but actually it just means disciple. And so the Buddha had his disciples, and other teachers had their disciples. But it was widely realized that if you were sincere in getting yourself out of cyclic existence, leaving the household life was a very essential part of that. Okay? Now, why is that? Why is that? Okay? Why is leaving the household life to become a monastic something that's very important? It doesn't mean you can't attain enlightenment if you don't become a monastic. Lay people can attain enlightenment. But why is monastic life emphasized? Why did the Buddha bother to set up the Sangha community? And that's because our choice of lifestyle greatly influences our ability to practice. Yeah? And when you think about it a little bit, it becomes very clear how our choice of lifestyle influences our ability to practice. Okay? For example, if I had a husband and kids, would I be able to be here doing a course for this long teaching? No. My husband wouldn't like it, my kids wouldn't like it. And I would miss all of them and want to be with them, and I would spend all my time worrying about them. Okay? So just the fact of leaving the family life gives you a lot more time and a lot more freedom to do things that when you have a family are very difficult to do. Simply because you have commitments and obligations to your family members, and those commitments and obligations require time. So you have less time for practice because you're serving your family. Of course, you can serve your family with a good motivation and use it as a process of creating merit, and that's wonderful to do. But if you want to do serious study of the scriptures, it's hard to do that when you have a child, when you have a baby who's crying, or you have a teenager who's on drugs, or you have a middle schooler who is totally absorbed in video games and can't pull themselves out of them. Okay? So there's just so many other things that you have to attend to, that to have the time and the ability to concentrate on study is difficult. Similarly, if you want to do long retreats, it's difficult when you have a family. Your family misses you. They want you there. If you're the one in the relationship who pays the bills, you have to be there at the end of the month to pay the bills, because your partner isn't used to doing that, and might not do it correctly or might not do it at all. And so there's all these other things you have to take care of, and plus, from your own side, you're very attached to these people. You feel so much love and connection and draw to them that you yourself don't want to be away from them so much. But then when you're there and you're involved in the family life, well, we all know what that's like, don't we? Do any of your parents have ideal marriages? Think of your parents. Do your parents have an ideal marriage? Do you know anybody who has an ideal marriage? Can you think of anybody who really has the wonderful ideal marriage, where all their needs are met in the relationship, where even if they fight, the power of love overcomes it, and you come together again? Have you ever had that yourself? Mary Grace, you're laughing. She's married. Realistically married. So, when we look around, we see many couples, but finding couples that are truly satisfied in their relationship, very difficult, extremely difficult. Okay, so the force of the attachment to the family creates so many problems in our mind and makes us perpetually dissatisfied, because we have so many expectations of our family and of our partner and of our kid, and how they're going to meet our needs and satisfy our longing for love and appreciation and everything. And we have all these needs, and we're depending on these people to fulfill them, and they simply can't. In the same way that we can't fulfill their needs, because they have images of what their ideal spouse is going to be like, or what their ideal parents are going to be like, or what their ideal kids are like. I mean, are any of you your parents' ideal child? What your parents wanted when they had a kid. Is that how you turned out? Think about it. How you turned out and what your parents wanted you to be. How much do those things jive? Not so much, do they? So what makes us think we're going to have kids that are going to meet our expectations and be what we want them to be? Yeah? And was it easy for our parents when we didn't turn out to be what they wanted us to be? Did they say, oh, yippee, I have a kid who's doing the total opposite of what I want? You know, I mean, at the best, they kind of accept things and they go along with it, you know. But how many parents just go, yippee, you know, you're doing what's in your heart, but even though it's not what I want you to do. Yeah, it's hard. So what makes us think we're going to be any different as parents? You know, or as spouses? That somehow we're not going to have the problems in relationships that our parents or our friends or our relatives have. You know? We always think, oh, I'm going to be different. But, you know, as you practice and, you know, we see how powerful attachment is. You know, when they talk about the cause of samsara, you know, when they're going through the Four Noble Truths and true origin, even though ignorance is the root of samsara, craving is always put down as the origin. Because that craving in all of its manifestations keeps our minds so trapped in cyclic existence. Yeah? Because we're always searching for something outside of ourselves that's going to satisfy our needs, that's going to make us happy, that's going to make us feel okay about ourselves. And we can never control the external world to get everything we want, or to make other people be what we want them to be. So samsara, cyclic existence, is by its own nature totally unsatisfactory. You know, and the craving that fuels it produces one set of problems after another set of problems. Okay? Hold on. So, you know, if we really want to eliminate craving and also eliminate the ignorance that's the root of samsara, then we need, you know, then a simple lifestyle is really optimal. Yeah, a simple lifestyle where we don't have a lot of family commitments, where we don't have to go to work to support our family. Because as soon as you have a family, then you have to go to work to support it. Yeah, so your career takes up a lot of time just to get the money to support your family. Plus, you know, we like our career and you know, I wouldn't mind getting a little bit more money and having a little bit more fame and acknowledgement and so on and so forth. And so we get quite involved in a career. And that takes up a lot of time also. Yeah? So when you have a career, you know, if I had a career doing something, would I be able to be here now? You know, very difficult. I'd have to apply for leave months in advance. Then my employer might say yes, and then a few months later say, no, we need you. And, you know, all sorts of things. Or give me unpaid leave, but then I have to pay all my bills at home, and I can't really afford that. So, you know, so all these things are very much tied together. And when you spend some time thinking about it, you can see how craving just is the foundation for all of this. Yeah? So if we want to you know, eliminate our craving and realize the nature of reality, a simple lifestyle is the best way to do it. And so as a monastic, having left the home life, gone into homelessness, then the meaning of that is that you have a simple lifestyle. So you don't have a family, you don't have a big house, you don't have a career. Yeah, you don't have all these things that other people have. And you train your mind to be okay with all of that. And you appreciate all the spare time and energy you have to dedicate to the Dharma. Okay? So, the ordained life, I think, is quite important. Like I said before, lay people can practice and can attain realizations, can attain nirvana, Buddhahood, but it is more difficult, I think, simply because of the time factor and the complexity of life when you have a lot of things going on in your life. Okay? And I think this is why I always like people to have had some experience in supporting themselves before they ordain, because then you know how complicated life is. Yeah, when you have to support yourself. Yeah, it's complicated. Okay, so when the Buddha first set up the Sangha, the purpose of the Sangha was so that there was a community of people who could study and practice and support each other on the path. Because it's very difficult doing the path on our own. Of course, at the final end of the day, we're on our own. We die alone. Only we can work with our own mind. Only we can change our own mind. So in that way, it's a solitary path. Only we make decisions for ourselves. Yeah, other people can influence or advise us, but we're the ones who basically choose. But within that part that is solitary, we do need the support and influence of people who are trying to do the same things with their life that we're trying to do with our life. Okay? So when there's a Sangha community, you're together with people who have that same purpose, who have that same direction. Yeah, so we're all going in the same direction together. So they often talk about like a grove of trees. If you're one tree in a grove of trees, then because everybody around you is growing up, straight up, you also go straight up. The wind may come, but it's not going to influence you and make you grow crooked like it will if you're the sole baby sapling in a meadow. The wind's going to make you grow crooked. If you're in a whole forest, you're going to go straight because everybody else is growing straight. So you're protected by the group energy, by the common aim of the group. Okay, and so our common aim is liberation, full awakening. Okay, our common aim is not to become famous, is not to have a comfortable, luxurious life. Yeah, is not to have a good sex life. Those are things that are not our our aim in life. Okay. Of course, as monastics, we still have to take care of practical things. Yeah. This huge building. Yeah, that's why Venerable Tarpa is in here, because she's taking care of some of the things involved in building Chenrezig Hall. But the thing is, what's different is that even though you have to take care of these practical things, yeah, your motivation for doing them is very different. Okay? When we're building Chenrezig Hall, we're not doing it so that we have a nice, big luxury house so when our friends come over, they all go, wow, look at your house. Who made this? Where did you get that? This is fantastic. Envy, 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 envy. And we go, that's not why we're building Chenrezig Hall. Okay, we're building Chenrezig Hall principally for the guests, because when we have courses, big courses, there isn't enough room. Okay, if it were only for us, the kitchen and the dining room would be sufficient. But, when there's a lot of people who come, our kitchen and dining room are very uncomfortable. Yeah, and our bedrooms are crowded, and very often in large courses, the nuns have to move out of their rooms and go stay in another building so that the lay people stay in their rooms. Okay? So we're doing it because we need also bedroom space for the guests who come. Yeah, and so the whole motivation is, one of, when we're working on the building, is of serving the community and serving all the people who are going to come here, and serving the Dharma, because the whole purpose of having the building is so that people can practice the Dharma. Yeah, we're not opening a resort. Yeah, the purpose isn't for people to, come and lie around and sunbathe in the meadow with the knapweed. Yeah, the purpose is for people to come and create merit and purify their minds and progress on the path. So we're offering service. We're trying to create the circumstances that will enable people for generations in the future to come, which may include some of our future lives if we're so lucky, to have a place to study and practice. Okay, so it's done with a very different motivation. In any case, when the Buddha first set up the Sangha, it was a group of wandering mendicants. They began to become settled, to stay in one place during the rainy season, because in India you basically have three seasons. You have winter, which is comparatively warmed compared to here. You have spring, and then you have monsoon, which is the summertime when it rains and is very, very hot. So in the monsoon time, the other wandering sects would usually stay put, because there's all sorts of insects around, and if you went into villages to collect food, and went into villages on alms round, you were walking, you were trampling people's crops and fields, you were stepping on insects, and so they developed this process of staying put during the 3 months of the rains of the monsoon time, and so the Buddha also had his Sangha do that too. So there began to be these, viharas where people stayed for 3 months, and then after that they would leave and resume their wandering life, where they basically lived on alms. Okay, they did not beg. So this is really incorrect to call it, with the Buddha's holding a begging bowl, or to say they begged for their food. They did not beg. Begging implies asking. Yeah, they simply walked through the town, and the people who wanted to give food gave the food. Okay, they went on alms round. And so Indian society was very used to people who were shramanas, who had left the household life, to walking through and to giving them food. Yeah, when they stayed in one place during the rain season, then very often people started bringing food to the monastery. Yeah, but in any way there was always this relationship between the lay people and the Sangha, and the Sangha deliberately put themselves in the position of being dependent on the kindness of the lay people for their 4 requisites for food, clothing, shelter, and medicine. Okay, and so that really changes your mind when you are dependent on others for those 4. Yeah, so at the Abbey, we can't wander into town. Our town is a little bit far away, and the people would probably be a bit shocked, and we might have to get a parade permit to do it. Some of my friends, the ones at Shasta Abbey, when they went into when they go into their local town to go on alms round, they have to get a parade permit. Yeah, because they don't have the custom in the town, and if you have a group of people walking one after another in town, then okay. So we don't do that. So the way we do it is people bring food here, and we only eat the food that's offered to us. So we don't just go bop into town when we feel like eating something or when we need something. We just make do with what's here. Okay, so so try and have a simple lifestyle where we're dependent on the lay people. Yeah, and then so that was the idea behind being wandering mendicants. And then when they began to settle, then similarly, living independence upon other people. So after the monastics would do a rains retreat, and then after that, the lay people would offer robes. It was a time for making a lot of offerings, because in the monsoon rains, your robes usually got pretty decrepit, and it was very hard to find cloth in ancient India. So that was a time for offering new robes. It was called the Katina ceremony. And, and the people offered the viharas and so on. And in return, the monastics practiced well and kept their precepts well, set a good example as best as they could, even though they aren't perfect, and also shared the Dharma with the general population and taught people and so on, So as time went by, initially when the Sangha was set up, it was like this, and the Vinaya they lived by was very, very simple. It was one verse. And we'll get to it. You all have this handout. Did you all get the sheet? So we'll go through that. It's the 7 Vinayas, but you'll see that the initial Vinaya that the Buddha had the people live under was guard your speech well, purify your mind, and avoid all negativity of the body, so that the actions of your 3 doors will be pure. Being able to do so, this is the path of the great sage. So that was the Vinaya for 12 years, because the Sangha was very pure. People didn't make a lot of mistakes. They, acted properly and had good motivations. And then, as the Sangha grew, then other people kind of started joining, and some of them weren't so careful with their behavior and became naughty. And so when the Sangha did things that the lay people complained about, then the Buddha set up the precepts. So all the precepts were set up in response to specific incidents that happened where either other Sangha members or the lay people were unhappy about the behavior of a monk or a nun. Okay? So it wasn't that the Buddha said, I'm going to make up the Sangha and here are all the rules. It wasn't like that. Everything was open and free, and the precepts came about due to specific boo-boos. Goofs, misbehaviors, whatever you want to call them, that people did. And so to prevent people from doing those in the future. So then the Buddha also spoke about whenever he established the precepts, he spoke of 10 advantages that came from doing so. Okay? So I think we'll start on these today. And it's quite interesting to think about, why did the Buddha set up the precepts? Because this is giving us some information about, what the precepts mean to us. Okay. So, when we talk about the advantages, there's 10 advantages that the Buddha set forth of creating each of the precepts. And when he did so, those 10 are subdivided into 9 that are on the conventional, in the detailed level, and then 1 that is on the general level. Okay? Of the ones that are on the detailed level, there's also 3 categories: to promote harmony within the Sangha, to transform society, and to bring about individual liberation. Okay? So then I want to talk about, these 3 categories, and each of them has subdivisions where those 10 fit in. Okay? So the first one was to promote harmony within the Sangha. Okay, so the Buddha set up precepts to promote harmony in the Sangha. Yeah, that's the general heading there. Okay, so that's telling us that harmony in the Sangha is very, very important. Yeah, that it's really crucial that the monastics stay in harmony, that they abide together and practice in harmony. Okay, now why is that important? Why is that important for the Sangha to be in harmony? Yeah?
You're not all of your time is taken up with reactions and afflictions and transforming.
Yeah, you spend a lot of time just in conflict with each other and complaining about each other and blaming each other and everything like that. Yeah. and also, so not only it spends time doing that, but it also disturbs our minds. Yeah, and when our minds are disturbed because the community's in conflict, then it becomes more difficult to meditate. Yeah, so harmony in the Sangha is very important. So within that, the first branch is to direct the monastics. Okay, so what this means to direct the monastics is to show us which way to put our physical, verbal, and mental energy. You know, how to direct our energy in a good way. Yeah, because when we enter the Sangha, we're kind of like we're like infants, and we don't know what to do, so we need direction. Yeah, we can't just be, ordained and then, okay, go to it. That's like popping out of your mother's womb and taking care of yourself. You can't do it. You're still a baby. So the precepts give us direction, and they help us to discipline ourselves and to restrain ourselves from wrongdoing. And so, of course, when we're able to restrain ourselves from wrongdoing, then we prevent disharmony, and it enables everybody around us to live in a harmonious way. Okay, so the precepts give us direction that promote harmony in the Sangha. Okay, second reason is actually follows up on that, to foster peace and happiness among the monastics. Okay, so when we are all practicing in the same way, we have a commonly agreed upon code of conduct. We're going to do these things and we're not going to do these things, and we've already agreed upon that. Then if we all try our best to keep that, then we can live together in peace and harmony. Yeah, you can see in society one thing we have difficulty with. I mean, why do we have difficulty living in peace and harmony in greater society? Is that we don't really have a mutual code of conduct. Different people think different things are perfectly okay. Yeah, and something that one person considers greedy, another person says, this is fine, this is a path to success, I need my freedom to pursue it. And something that other people may say, this is harmful and full of hate, somebody else says, but this is standing up for my rights, and I need the freedom to do that. And so, because there's not a common standard of behavior, then, people do all sorts of things, and there's all sorts of conflicts. Yeah? So, by monastics having this common standard, it doesn't mean that we're all perfect and always abide by the standard. We make mistakes, that's quite natural. We make mistakes, but the idea is that when we make mistakes, we learn from our mistakes. And so the purpose of our community is to come together to do our best to live in peace and harmony, and when we make mistakes and we violate our mutually agreed upon code, then we look inside of our own minds and we learn about ourselves and say, well, what was my motivation for doing that? Why did I do that? What did I think I was going to get out of it? You know? And we see there's usually some self-centered reason. And then we say, okay, there's some self-centered reason that, and I did this action, but look how it created so many waves around me and, you know, troubled so many people. And look at the negative karma I created myself that I'm going to have to experience the result of. And so when we contemplate in that way, then we gain more energy to learn from our mistakes and to learn to restrain ourselves in the future. Okay? So, so that's all part of living together in the Sangha. And when I said here, you know, the first one, that it was to direct the Sangha so that there's a mutually agreed upon code that we're going to do and not do, this is really important because when you join the Sangha, you know, the Sangha has its ways of doing things. So it's not like we join the Sangha and I don't like the way things are done, so I want to change them. Okay? You know, when you join the Sangha, you're joining the Sangha to learn from the group wisdom of the Sangha, to learn from the wisdom of the Buddha. And in the process of doing things, your buttons are going to be pushed, and there's going to be lots of things you don't like, and lots of things that make you very uncomfortable. But these are all things that are part of our practice, and by ordaining, we are voluntarily saying, I am willing to go through the discomfort of these common regulations and precepts and things, because I know at the end of the day it's going to be good for me and help me to grow in a good way. Okay? So, you know, when we look at many other groups, you know, because people join in groups all over in society, and it's interesting to think about the other groups that we've, you know, voluntarily chosen to join, and what has been our motivation, and what has been the purpose of that group, and how has being a member of that group influenced our internal growth as a living being. Yeah? And especially in America, you know, we have this idea of, you know, kind of, well, we're going to join and then we're going to change everything. Yeah? And, you know, and make it new and better and improved. You know, because we're going to invent all this new technology or this new blah, 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 blah. Okay? And that's fine to invent new technology. But the Sangha isn't about new technology and new scientific breakthroughs and things like that. We're about taming the mind, you know. And so our CEO is the Buddha. We have an enlightened CEO, yeah, and we're voluntarily choosing to follow the guidance of this CEO because we see, wow, you know, I mean, where he's taking us and the purpose of it is something that we want to go on, you know. And so we're not going to join the Sangha so that we can get rid of everything that we don't like and make it exactly the way our ego wants. You know, we're joining the Sangha to be able to learn from the Sangha, to learn from the Buddha, to learn from the Dharma. You know, as we learn, yeah, then there may be certain things in our modern culture and our modern way of doing things and the whole situation that we're in that they don't fit really carefully with or really in an easy way with the precepts. And only when we've really learned the precepts and know what the precepts are designed to teach us can we then talk about, you know, what needs to be modified in the 21st century. Okay? You know, for example, they didn't have cell phones at the time of the Buddha. So there's no precepts regarding cell phones. So does that mean that all the Sangha can have cell phones and do whatever we want on the cell phones because there's no precepts regarding the cell phones? No, you know, we still need guidance. So we turn to the precepts, and having learned the different precepts and kind of the purpose why Buddha set things up, and the mistakes that previous monastics did, then we see, okay, this is the direction we need to grow in. These are the disturbing mental states that we want to eliminate. And so then we have to, kind of make up some in-house precepts about cell phones that are going to serve the same purpose as why the Buddha made up the other precepts. On the other hand, there's going to be precepts that are quite difficult to keep literally in the modern day and age. For example, the Bhikshunis have one precept not to go into a village alone. Well, that makes it really difficult if you're going to do anything. Because in common society, women are always out and about, alone. There's no big deal. In ancient India, they couldn't do that. If you were a single woman walking in town, you were a prostitute. So the nuns weren't allowed to walk in town, alone, because if they did, the lay people would think they were prostitutes and call them names. Yeah. So, but nowadays, if there's a woman walking in town, nobody calls you a prostitute. They call you a potential consumer, and they like you. So, that particular precept, we don't keep very strictly because it's a totally different social climate nowadays, But we do have it so that when people go out in the evenings, then, monks or nuns, they go out with a companion. Yeah. So that's the way we've kind of adapted that to cover the purpose of, safety and Sangha's reputation and so on. Yeah. So, it's when you have familiarity with the precepts that then, you see how to adjust things to the 21st century. But at the beginning, it's really important to come in with a mind that I'm coming in here to learn. Yeah, I'm not coming in here to get my way. If I want to get my way, if the purpose of my life is to get my way, there's the whole rest of the world to go and do it. Yeah, and see if you can get your way anywhere else. Really try. Try and get your way anywhere else. So, maybe you have more success than in a monastery, but you're never going to completely get your way. So, anyway, we come in here to train, and so the precepts foster peace and harmony amongst the monastics as we all train together and all subdue our minds together. Okay, so those are 2 of the 10 benefits: to direct the monastics and to create peace and harmony among the monastics. And those 2 are branches of the one to promote harmony within the Sangha. Okay, so we'll stop here for today. Any questions? Yeah.
By adopting simple life and minimizing in the conventional level, does that have an influence in the subtle level with the craving and how reducing effects of craving?
Oh, very much, very much. So the question is living a simple lifestyle and reducing our needs, does that directly affect our craving? Very much, because when there's no bars hold on our craving, then we go out and get whatever we want. And that usually produces more dissatisfaction because we always want more and better, more and better, more and better, no matter how much we have or what we have. And we can see this. Everybody wants more and better. When we're living a simple lifestyle, we are learning that you can actually be happy without so much stuff. And we're learning that everything our mind craves, we don't have to follow that craving. We don't have to go and get it. That very soon our mind will just get over the craving Yeah, and we realize, oh, I can be happy without that. Yeah? And then that is like one little bit of freedom that you have. Because when our minds are filled with craving, we have no freedom. You know, craving just takes charge of the mind. There's no freedom in the mind. When we don't crave things, then we have freedom. I can have it, I can not have it. I'm happy either way. Okay? So by deliberately living a simple lifestyle and not getting all those things, we're training ourselves to be satisfied. Yeah? And satisfaction is worth much more than lots of stuff. Isn't it? Yeah? Because you can have lots of stuff and be very dissatisfied. You can have a little bit and be completely satisfied. Yeah? So we're learning to subdue our craving in that way. And it's really very free, you know, because so much if we look at our lives, you know, we tell ourselves, I need this, I need this, I need this. I remember when we did the first Vajrasattva retreat here, we got into a big discussion of our non-negotiables. Yeah, what we had to have, what we are not going to give up. Okay, so it was really interesting on the retreat, because the people in it were not monastics, but everybody kind of looking and, you know, what were their non-negotiables? For one person, it was her relationship with her son. You know, for somebody else, it was, you know, their career. For somebody else, it was a certain level of comfort. For somebody else, it was, you know, just certain things that, you know, your mind is saying, I am not going to give this up, period. Yeah? And you can see when the mind is like that, there's no freedom. We're totally bound by our craving. So we had this huge discussion about our non-negotiables and the effect they had on our lives, how, you know, so strongly clinging to those things directed our lives in certain directions. Yeah? So when we learn to subdue that, more space, more freedom.
But also, living out there in society, I think the whole consumer society is put together so that the craving is more sensually based.
Yeah.
You know, even if you don't have a craving initially, you know, the publicity, the advertising.
Yep. Yeah. Right. Right. It used to be when advertising first started, it was just to give people information where they could get things in case they needed those things. Now advertising is to create craving where there wasn't previously craving. And we're open and receptive to our minds being played with, and we just go along with it. Yeah? And so we are very much controlled by our cravings. And so that's another reason, really, why we cut down on our interaction with the media, because so much of the media is about advertising and creating craving. Yeah. And also, in our modern world, you know, where as Americans especially, we're using more than our fair share of resources. You know, learning to live a simple life is getting more in tune with our obligations to the planet and our obligations to all the other sentient beings that we share the planet with. That we're not going to use, you know, overuse the resources of this planet, because it's not a compassionate thing to do for the others that we share the planet with and for future generations. Yeah? So I think monastic life is very much in line with preserving the environment. Mm-hmm.
I was struck when you talked about how in family life we often expect all these people to fulfill our needs and how that they set up the suffering. I think we also can bring that mind to life in a community, expecting people to fulfill your needs. How do we work with that?
Okay, so we can, you know, bring that that mind too of wanting people to fulfill our needs to the community. So, and it gets acted out and so on. But that's something that the community is going to point out to us when we're doing. Yeah. Because if we try and control the community through our moods, you know, I need this so badly, and, you know, so the community has to do what I want, or so-and-so in the community has to do what I want, people aren't going to jump in behind you and support that. Yeah. People are going to say, wait a minute, we have an agreed upon way of living here. Yeah, your perceived need, that you need somebody or something to do this and that, does not lie within the reason why we've come together, and does not lie within the reason of how we're practicing. So we will help you overcome that. Yeah. So the Sangha doesn't just say, oh, you have the wrong need, you know, kind of, who do you expect we are, get out of here. You know, the Sangha says, yeah, we're all deluded, and we see that you have this problem, and we will help you to overcome that craving. And the way we help you to overcome that craving is not by giving you what that craving wants. Yeah, it's by helping you understand what's going on in your mind that is creating that craving to start with. Okay? Yeah. So that's why sometimes, you know, in the community it's like, I'm not happy, I want everybody, and the community doesn't go, oh, poor you, mama, here's some chocolate, you know. The community is compassionate and empathetic, you know, but realizes that we have to help this person find another way to meet their needs, yeah, or to subdue those needs, because sometimes what we think we need are basically just attachments, and we don't really need them. Yeah. So sometimes somebody points that out to us in the community. You know what you're saying you want? Check up if you really need that. And if getting that is really going to make you happy. Huh?
In Japan, and then now in some other Asian countries too, some leaders of companies send their young trainees to monasteries for some time to explain some stuff like how to live in harmony and how to pursue your behavior and so on. I find that quite interesting. Otherwise, for example, in Germany, the young man has to go to the army, for 1 year. If you have physical disabilities, then you can do social work, for example, going to hospitals. So I like this idea, this vision to have one day in the Western countries, 2 monasteries where young people can go for a year, 6 months, and pursue their behavior.
Yeah, I think it would really help young people, I think, to spend some time in a monastery, you know, just to see an alternative way of living. Yeah. And to see how to create harmony in their minds.